Okay, today we're going to look at articles in a much greater detail. I've taken this newspaper article from the Telegraph. It's an article about the Great Fire of London. And so let's go through every single article we can see in this story, and I hope to show you that they're used perhaps counterintuitively on a number of occasions. So look at the first sentence. It is now 350 years since the Great Fire of London razed the city's medieval heart to the ground. So these ones should be fairly clear. There is only one Great Fire of London, and so that one will always have the definite article. Always, although the writer does miss it out later. I consider this a mistake, and we'll see that the writer makes a few mistakes which are in green. So the Great Fire of London, there's only one Great Fire of London, that's clear, it's a definite article, razed the city's medieval heart. Now, do we know which city it's referring to? We do. We know it's referring to the city of London. And so here we would definitely need the city in order to explain to the reader, to make it clear to the reader that we are talking about London. So it razed London's medieval heart to the ground. Now, the ground will always take the definite article because, like the sky, there's only one the ground, and it's underneath our feet. And we do anyway have an idiom to raze to the ground, an expression or a phrase to raze to the ground, meaning to burn completely. So when a building is completely burnt out, it's razed to the ground. Okay, so three pretty clear instances of the definite article there. But in the next sentence we see, but at such a distance, it is easy to forget the human drama which played out as thousands of people lost their homes, their livelihoods, and in some cases, their lives. Now I want to mention a few things about this indefinite article, because I can understand that many students would rationalize a definite article here. They would want to see, but at such the distance. And I understand why, because they're referring actually to the distance we are away from the Great Fire. And it's been defined as 350 years. I mean, technically it's a duration and not a distance. But he's using distance here a little bit metaphorically. And the important thing to remember, I think, is after the word such, there are very, very few occasions when you will need a definite article. When we say something like, it was such a great show, or it was such a wonderful performance, after such in all of those sentences will be a, because it's actually an existential clause. And I think this is very important. I don't think books very often talk about existential clauses. But an existential clause is when we simply refer to the existence of something. And when we refer to the existence of something, for example, there is a God, or something like that, we must use the indefinite article. And here we are referring to, it is easy to forget at such a distance the human drama which played out as thousands of people lost their homes. And so this it is, like there is and like I have, it's very often used to introduce an existential clause, which is basically a description of what exists. It's just a description of something that exists. It introduces a noun. And so we will always find that noun with an indefinite article. It's easy to forget the human drama at such a distance. Okay, now we'll see this idea a few times in this text, which came out today, which is the 5th of September 2016. Now I have highlighted the it is to show you these existential clauses, and I also wanted to highlight that this is counterintuitive. Look at these sentences. This is the story, so we start with the story, and then we get the story, but we get it is a story. Look down here, I'll change the colour to make it really clear. This is the story. It is a story. It is a story. It is also a story. Now look at that. They're all is and then indefinite articles, but the first one is the. I know you are taught to use a with a noun when you first mention the noun, and then the with the noun every other time. But I hope that you can see that in this article in a newspaper, they have done exactly the opposite. They have started with the story and then gone on to a story, a story, a story. Okay? Now, why is this? This is because when we first mention a noun, if that noun is prominent, and what I mean is, if that noun is the main issue of the rest of the article, and this article, this newspaper article, is about the Great Fire of London, it's the story of the Great Fire of London, well, then we use the with that noun. It's just to show prominence. We could actually start this one with "this is a story" because it could be an existential clause, meaning it's just referring to the existence of the story. But it could also be considered a prominent noun for the rest of the article, and so the story is used by the writer to show that the story is the main issue, the main object of this article. It's the main subject. Sorry, it is the subject of the newspaper article. And so because of that, we just say the story. We use a "the", even though it's the first time we mention it. However, we use "it is a story of official blunders", "it is a story of chaos", "it's a story of mass hysteria", "it's a story of profiteering and racist violence", "it's also a story of some heroism and charity". Now, these are parallel structures, and we're repeating this parallel structure of "it is a story", "it's a story", "it's also a story", in order to set up a description. We're setting the scene in this first paragraph. We're setting the scene of the Great Fire of London, and for that reason, we can start with "the" to show that the story is the main thing, but then go on to indefinite article, simply to use existential clauses and to introduce the existence of the story as just a description. I actually prefer to think of it as we're setting the scene, and because of that we use a. I can give you a lot of other examples here, and I won't write them, I'll just say them. For example, we could say, "I admire John. He is a man of great talent". Now, you might think that we have defined the man with John, but then I say he is a man of great talent. And this is the existential clause. I'm just describing John. And even though I do refer with a man to John, to make it a description, to make it just a statement about existence, I use the indefinite article. But it's not just with people. I could say, "I've always enjoyed football. It's a sport that I've played since I was a boy". And here I say it is a sport, even though we know which sport, it's football I'm talking about. However, I am just describing it. And because I'm just describing it, even though we know which sport, it stays as it's a sport that I've played since I was a boy. So the important thing to take away from this lesson is to watch out for existential clauses. And when you're just saying something about existence, like "there is a God", or "it is a great club", or "it is a wonderful story of chaos", you'll often hear this at the start of a film, by the way. You'll hear on a trailer for a film, you'll say, "It was a time of war". Now we say a time. It was a time of war. It was a time of destruction. You're just giving a description of the scene. You're setting the scene. And when you set the scene, you use a. Okay, I hope that's clear. Here is a mistake, by the way, "on knife's edge". It should be "on a knife's edge". And I just wanted to show you that writers, if you look at this guy's article, it's in the Telegraph today, writers also make mistakes with articles. If you check the dictionary, you'll see "on a knife's edge" is the expression. And now you might also be confused because we know which city it is. We know that it's London, but again, because of this descriptive effect, we're using a city now just to make it a description of what existed at that time. And so we use this indefinite article to set the scene. That's what I want you to remember. To set the scene, we often use it. So let's go a little bit further now. A minor and commonplace accident. So it just wants to introduce the accident. An all-consuming conflagration. Again, we're introducing the fire. what actually happened on that day. We know exactly which one, but it's just the introduction, and that's why we use A so many times when we're setting the scene. Okay, and at the end here we have the climax of the fire's worst, and again it's a mistake, it should be worst, not worse. So it unfolds over 72 hours, beginning at midnight on September the 2nd, 1666, and ending at the climax of the fire's worst day. So here we need the climax because it's qualified by a definite noun, the fire. And if you've got of and definite noun, very often it's going to be definite because we know which climax. It's the climax of the fire's worst day. Yeah, and there was only one climax of the fire's worst day, which happened at a particular time, a definite time. And so it really must be definite articles for these three. Now, if we go down, we see the Museum of London. There's only one Museum of London. Well, there are other museums in London, but each one actually takes an article. We say the Natural History Museum, the Science Museum, the Museum of London, the Victoria and Albert Museum, and so many of the museums actually take an article. And the following sources. So always remember we must use the if we know exactly which ones, and we do here. It's very clear which ones here, and so the refers to something very definite there. Now, if we go a bit further down, we have some more description, and again we're setting up the scene here of what was happening on that fateful night in September, midnight. As the clocks tick over into Sunday the 2nd of September 1666, London is resting. Okay, so this is a narrative, and now we've got the clocks, and in the next sentence we've got the city is in a state of tension. So the clocks, we know which ones. They are the clocks which are in London, and we even know when. Sunday the 2nd of September 1666. So these clocks are very definite. We could say as clocks tick over into Sunday the 2nd of September, and that will give a more general idea to the reader of just any clocks were ticking over into that time. But here the writer wants to put us right in the situation, right there in the moment, and so he uses the definite article. The city means London, and so we must have a definite article, and a state of tension. We certainly use a here, even though we know it was of tension, and it's to show that it could have been a state of something else. It could have been a state of peace, a state of calm, and that's why we say a state. It's one of many states. And so this one, the writer wants to convey the idea that a state of tension was just one way, one situation the city could have been in. But please notice again the is. And so you could argue that this is an existential clause. Yeah, it's this. We've got it over here. The city is in a state of tension. Yeah, just like the man is a friend or something like that. Yeah, you've got the man, but you already know who he is. But you're telling the listener that the man is a friend, or the man is a lawyer, the man is a doctor. Still, it's an existential clause, really. You're just telling us information about that man. You're not defining him, you're describing him. So, the Dutch, we have, with any groups of people, we always use the definite article, the English, the Russians, the Chinese, whoever. And rumours of plots by Catholics and unrepentant Republican loyalists swirl through the streets. We know which streets. We mean the streets of London. And that's why we say the streets. Okay, again we've got an it is. It's just 6 years since the Restoration. There's only one Restoration, and less than a year since a devastating plague which killed or drove away 1/6 of the city's population. Now we've used a here, a devastating plague, and it's because of the existential clause, the it is. Yeah, it's a description. It's just giving a description of the city at that time. Nevertheless, if I had used words like bubonic plague or black death, there is only one Black Death, and it's the plague which struck Europe at this time. I'm not sure if it is, but you'll have to ask a historian. But Black Death in English is very definite. There was only one Black Death, and there was only one bubonic plague. Bubonic plague actually refers to the type of virus. And so as a type, it must be the bubonic plague as opposed to a different type of virus. Okay, so if we had used either of those words, it would have been very definite. But as it's a devastating plague, it's really rather indefinite, and it's being described as just existing. It is a devastating plague. Well, it's less than 1 year since a devastating plague struck. And we have the same point in the next sentence. Of course, the city refers to London, so London's population. But have a look at the next sentence. It's been a long, dry summer. Now, it has been is just like it is. It's present perfect for it is. We've used present perfect to put the reader in that situation. And obviously, this is quite strange for some listeners because they'll think present perfect can only be used when something's true now. And this is 1666. Well, this is just an effect. It's a literary effect to put the reader in that situation. And again, he's used that existential clause, and so we can say it was a long, dry summer. Yeah, you could say this even if you were talking about the last summer, because it's an existential clause. You're just saying it has been a long, dry summer. Yeah, I could say it now about our summer. Don't know if it's necessarily true, but I would say about the English summer that's just passed, it has been a long summer, a short summer, a dry summer, a wet summer, a, because it has been, because it's an existential clause. So I can't emphasize enough how important these are. Let's carry on. Okay, the Navy, there's only one Navy, so that will always take the definite article. He lives above the bakery, Thomas Fariner. Now, we've already mentioned the bakery here. It's Thomas. We even know whose it was. It was Thomas Fariner's bakery, and we even know where it was. It was in Pudding Lane. And so here, he lives above the bakery. We'd need the definite article. It's already become very definite. With his daughter, Hannah, and also with a maid. And here it's very indefinite, isn't it? We really don't know who this maid is. We have no name. We don't know how many maids Thomas has. He probably has 5 different maids. And so it's definitely indefinite. Yeah, it must be indefinite. Okay, at midnight, that maid briefly comes downstairs. Okay, we'll have to push the page on a bit to check that everything is well, and then goes back to bed. Fariner has loaded his oven with faggots ready for the morning. Now here we mean the next morning, and so it must be the morning. That makes it very clear we mean the next morning. Along with some flitches of bacon. Later he will swear that he didn't leave anything amiss in his bakery, that the fire which is about to break out could only be the work of deliberate arsonists. Now, the fire is defined here. Which fire? The one which is about to break out. And it's got a very prominent place in this story anyway. If we've already know we're talking about the Great Fire of London. And so it's very definite. And the work here is very definite because we know which work, the work of deliberate arsonists. And we know we're talking about the work of starting the fire. And so we know exactly which work we're talking about here. Anyway, again, I've highlighted the existential clause. All evidence suggests that it was simply an accident. Notice with the it was, there was. Yeah, this is the existential clause. We use an indefinite article again. Okay, any reasonably attentive schoolchild can tell you that the Great Fire of London started here in Pudding Lane. So, naturally, the Great Fire of London will always be with the. The city is a forest of wood and highly flammable tar paper. Once again, the existential clause. The city is a forest of wood. Very clear existential clause. With houses leaning out into the incredibly narrow streets. Okay, now these are the streets of London again, and so we know which streets. Okay, let's come down here. Many houses are overcrowded too, subdivided and let out to however many families can squeeze in, both politically and materially. The city is one huge tinderbox. London. So, the roots. Which roots? The roots of the Great Fire. So that's really definite again. The roots of the Great Fire of London is very definite. There's only one Great Fire of London, and so there are only one particular set of roots which started the Great Fire. Okay, let's go a little bit further down. Farriner's manservant wakes to find the house clogged with smoke. Okay, we've already introduced the house. It's very clear whose house. We mean Thomas's house. Quickly he rouses everyone, and then they try to leave via the bakery. We know which bakery. We know even what street it's on, only to find their path blocked by fire. Now, I highlighted this because this is a good opportunity to talk about no article. We could say by the fire here. That is possible. It is okay to say by the fire, and then you mean by the fire in the bakery that evening or morning, evening I think, or late at night. But we can also say by fire for the same kind of reason that we say by plane, by train, by car. It's just a set expression. And with this by, blocked by fire, blocked by water, blocked by could be any kind of expression, and it would just mean, or any kind of noun, and it would just mean blocked by that substance. Okay, I think it's like saying I travelled by plane or by car. You just miss the article out in that expression. But you don't have to. You can say only to find their path blocked by the fire, or whatever else was blocking their path. It could be blocked by the man, or you can say blocked by men. Okay, instead they climbed out of the window, his window. They climbed out of the window, edged, he's made a mistake there as well, edged along the gutters. Oh no, sorry, that he hasn't. He's using present tense here to describe it. So instead they climb out of the window, they edge along the gutters and climb back in through a neighbour's window. Now, a neighbour's window, we say a neighbour. We don't know which one. Maybe it was the neighbour on the left, maybe the one on the right. And we don't know which window here. Before we knew it was his window, the window of his bakery. And so we said the window. But here we said a neighbour's window because we don't know which neighbour. Okay, coming down here, unfortunately his maid refuses to follow, and although we don't know her name, she becomes the fire's first casualty, the Great Fire of London. The fire now begins to spread. A neighbour escapes his house just in time, so this is the first time we've heard about this person, and he's introduced, so first time we've heard about him, we use A. Sparks drift into the hay piled up behind the Star Inn. So we know which hay here. It's the hay piled up behind the Star Inn, and because we know these places, it becomes very definite. In 1666, there is no fire brigade, no emergency service, neighbours, and the militia, the police. We still say the police. We mean only that organisation. There's only one. They are supposed to handle this, but when the parish constables arrive, they decide to call out the Lord Mayor. Now, we could actually get rid of the there. We could say, but when parish constables arrive, meaning any of them. But here it just makes them a bit more definite. The ones who arrived, they're the ones who decide to call out the Lord Mayor. But it could be possible to. It's just a bit weird not to use the when you've got they in the same sentence and you've got what they did. And so it's really quite defined. It's quite definite. The parish constables arrived who decided to call out the Lord Mayor, and there's still only one Lord Mayor of London.